You are listening to BitsCast KE, conversations that matter to young people, bit by bit.
Mazungumzo ya kweli na jamii, uwezo kwa vijana, mabadiliko. Mazungumzo ya kweli na jamii, uwezo kwa vijana, mabadiliko.
Welcome back, BitsCast KE, conversations that matter to young people. This is season 2, episode 1, and we're talking about climate change. So climate change has already have significant impact in our society and also Kenya at large. Our country is experiencing severe drought, flood, extreme weather event, and these events are damaging crops and also living livestock and also equally displacing people. So today we are here to talk about climate change and how they affect young people. I'm joined by Sam Nyamwange, Director of Programs from Crew.
I'm still getting used to that.
Yeah, Sam, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's nice to be back now as a guest.
Yeah.
Having been the host of season 1, I'm grateful to have had this opportunity being the first guest of season 2.
Mm-hmm. It is nice because the first time you're here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was in the host seat.
How was the host seat?
Hot. You think it is easy, but over time you get used to it, as I'm sure you will.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And today, as you know, we are talking about climate change and how it impacts young people.
Yes.
So before we jump into the conversation, can you please tell us about yourself and a bit of your background?
Okay, so my name is Sam Nyamwange. I normally say I joke for a living, but I do very many things. Whatever my hands find to do, I do it and use my brilliance to do it well. Currently, I'm the director of programs at Crew for All. Crew is a tech non-profit, and we build technology solutions for impact organizations across the world. A bit of my background in relation to climate change. I studied my bachelor's in environmental science at Kenyatta University, and that is where I really grew my passion, my enthusiasm for the environment, and I've been living in that space ever since.
Hold your horses. Just before we jump into the conversation, what is your favorite pastime currently?
I've really gotten into solving the Rubik's Cube. It is something that I've been doing for 17 years now. I have only managed to finally get all the sides ready last week.
I think I should also check that.
17 years in waiting. It is fulfilling. Let me tell you, it is fulfilling. And now I'm just struggling to get my time down. I am doing about 5 minutes, which is not good. And still with a lot of stealing, with a lot of help from YouTube videos here and there. But I am trying to garner to get under 3 minutes from offhead. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, quite interesting. Now, let's jump into the conversation.
Yes.
With supporting evidence, of course, I would like to start this conversation where many people run away from. Is climate change real?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. I think the best example is just the weather this morning. I think yesterday we had a very, very sunny day. I think we've had a very sunny season. And then all of a sudden we have rains all over Nairobi. The weather is acting very weird. So that is one, realism to why climate change is real. You can't, ignore it. It's real. There's a lot of scientific evidence that also shows that it is real. There's a lot of work going on. Recently, Kenya has just hosted the Africa Climate Summit. So if you don't believe me, at least believe what leaders. There is a lot that is happening. But, as for Kenyans specifically, it sort of manifests in weather patterns. It manifests in how we grow food. It manifests in the failures of the things that are, of the growing seasons that have been going on. It manifests in the things that you've been saying in the introduction, the severe droughts, the flooding, the extreme weather events, and so on. That's how it manifests.
Yeah. And here at BitsCast KE, basically what we do is we talk about conversations that matter to young people.
Absolutely.
Now, linking climate change to young people, how do we convince someone in Nairobi, a young person, that climate change is real and it is affecting them? And in what way exactly?
I have already given you an example of how climate change is real and how, you would look at it that way. It is important. There is a lot of work that activists in the environmental space are doing to sort of make people understand what climate change is, and it starts with understanding. So even for me, I started with understanding what climate change is, why the environment is important, and that's how I got into the space. So you must explain to them that, and as you're explaining to them what climate change is, you must localize the issue. You must localize it to what they're facing and how climate change affects them. So, for example, look at NairoBits today. It's likely that many students showed up late.
Yeah, definitely.
In a very weird roundabout way, in a very long way, if you look at it, it's climate change.
Yeah.
It is, we're not expecting rain today. We had rain today. That, affects your day in one way or another. So you must localize their issue. You must look for real life stories that, encourage them to, or rather that make them think. There are very many farmers across Kenya whose crops are failing. And that's why we have food shortages and so on. So you must, look for those real life stories and try to tell them. Interestingly, there are a lot of climate communicators now across the country. I will, mention a friend of mine called Abigail Kima. She runs a podcast called Hali Hewa. On there, you'll find real life stories. You'll find stories of people in high places, scientific people who are demystifying this thing. So this is some of the resources that, platforms like BitsCast have available to them to really explain to a young person in Nairobi why climate change is real and why it's important to think about.
Very true. And just to look at it on a very different perspective, I think someone told me climate change even affects how you date. I was like, how?
And at this point, it affects everything.
They give a very good narrative. The person is called Jocelyn Froda, a very good friend of mine. And she was like, basically the crops are failing. So which means there's shortage of food, which means taking someone on a date, it's very expensive.
Yes. That's very true. That's very true because, long gone are the days, especially for young people in Nairobi, that you would invite someone to your house on the first date and just cook and have a good meal and have a good time. You must go to a restaurant. And going to this restaurant, food shortage, food is expensive. Food is increasing every day. And I mean, it's a compounded result of very many things, oil here and there. But then, climate change definitely has a role to play in it. It has a role to play in almost all spheres of life. You must think about it when you think about politics, governance, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And from the look of the conversation, you're very, you have a lot of insights when it comes to, environment, climate. Let's go a bit back. How did your journey start in terms of being an environmentalist and how was it?
Interesting. I've sort of dropped hints around it already. But interestingly, after Form 4, I found myself in a course called environmental science. At that point, the only environment I knew was picking leaves in high school. So when they tell you to keep your environment clean, then for me it was, pick up leaves. And that was my reality because I used to go to a high school that was in a highland region. So it was very green. The trees were evergreen and then the leaves would fall. So keep your environment clean was pick up the leaves. Interestingly, I found myself in the environmental science course in KU, and now I started having a deep appreciation of these issues, an appreciation of, how does the environment relate with people? How does the environment relate to the economy? And how do all these things come together? And then I started learning about the Sustainable Development Goals. And I spent a majority of my time in campus actually going around Kenya teaching students from across the country about environmental sustainability and sustainable development goals. And through my little big thing, really fostering innovations around the sustainable development goals. So that's sort of how my journey started. And my journey started with education. And that's how I became passionate about it. So that's how I started. I've been in the space actively, still doing some activism here and there, working on advocacy issues. And now even at Crew for All, I'm pushing, climate tech solutions for organizations that require that, for organizations that, are, and community leaders as well, for people who are really looking to spread environmentalism around their places. And I have this very interesting opportunity where, in partnership with an organization called 10 Billion Strong, we have just called out, a digitalization and curriculum grant where organizations that are working on environmental sustainability and climate action are invited to get access to two things. Number one, the Crew platform, which is basically state-of-the-art technology that will enable you to create a customized online platform for your organizational needs, and you can use it to manage programs, engage communities, scale your work, and make a real impact. And the second thing that the people who get this grant get is the Green Leaders Academy, which is a comprehensive program that is designed to equip participants with a deeper understanding of environmental issues and empower them to take meaningful action within their communities. So if you are someone who wants to make other people learn yourself, and then make other people learn around environmental sustainability and climate action, then this is a good opportunity for you.
Where do they get the opportunity?
crewforall.org. Simple.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And basically, from telling us about your journey, telling us, basically climate change is real and all that.
Yes.
What are you doing currently in relation to fighting? Yeah.
Shami. I am talking on this podcast, number one. But, in looking at my day-to-day work, I have been working over the past 3 months to really foster curriculum collaboration around environmental sustainability and climate action. Because I look back at my journey, and if I did not sit through a class that taught me the importance of the environment, then I would not be here.
True.
And I am not saying that that is the right way. I'm not encouraging people to go to take degrees on environmental science. I mean, by all means, if you're interested, please do. But then there needs to be some form of environmental education. There needs to be some form of climate change education to teach people why this thing is important. So I've been leading, curriculum collaboration. And that's why I've just spoken about this grant where an organization called 10 Billion Strong has given their curriculum for free for people to actually use to train their communities. So even you as a community leader, you can come in, take this curriculum, learn through it, and then use it, localize it, use it to train your community. Because if they don't have this awareness, then they lack the possibility to even think about adaptation solutions, to think about mitigation solutions, early warning systems, and things that are normally not top of mind for them, or things that are top of mind for them, help them bring much more to the fore and help them think about what solutions they could give, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, true. Basically, I was to go to the digital side, of course, like you've given the first opportunity that people can tap into.
Yes.
What other role that the digital media play in relation to fighting climate change?
Big role. Podcasts like this help, disseminate information. I've spoken about Abigail Kima's podcast. There are very many podcasts which, break down the complex reports, the complex mechanisms that you have at COP, that is Conference of Parties, which is basically a large conference bringing together climate change or world leaders around climate change and environmental sustainability. But things like podcasts help to break that down for people at the level. Recently, I've had a story, or rather an initiative called COP Mashinani. The same way other big conferences have been brought to smaller levels, bring COP to a small level, and technology can help do that. There's a lot of work around how technology also helps simulate how, the future will look like to help you really convince people. Technology also helps you to, we have what we call the climate clock, which basically calculates the time that we have before we hit a certain significant number. We don't have the time to demystify, but 1.5 degrees Celsius. Please go take some time and Google that. So there is a lot of ways that digital media can break that down for very many young people. And, the only thing that it has to start from is an interest, but there has to be education that localizes this thing for them.
So it's local education to interest development. Now they can go and pursue a course,
solutions, and so on and so forth.
Basically
yes,
that.
And make individual changes to their own lives that actually make a reverberating impact for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I completely understand that this topic is not something that we can just cover in 15 minutes conversation. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have talked about a lot of things, in the climate space.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this episode, do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to convey to our listeners, especially young people in Kenya who are concerned about climate change and want to take an action?
I mean, importantly, climate change is real. There's no doubting about it. If you know it, take a chance, take a step, talk to your people, talk to your community, talk to anyone you can talk to, please reach out to them. Number 2, if you're a community leader, if you're looking to do anything around climate change, I've given you an opportunity to start with. So you don't have to start with 0, but ideate. Think about what are the things that my community faces and what are the possible solutions that I could create. There are interesting resources of very many African young people that have created very interesting solutions. One thing you can follow. Last year I was part of the Africa Youth Caravan to COP27. So that brought together 20 young people very passionate about what they're doing within their communities to educate them, to create solutions around mitigation, to create solutions around adaptation, where, climate change effects have already been done. So there's no small thing you can do. You just have to do what you can. Start small.
Thank you very much for those insights. Before you walk out of the door,
you can already see me going.
Yeah. Where do we find Mr. Sam Nyamwange? Don't say
on
at
LinkedIn.
home.
I mean, I got the question.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn, my name is Sam Nyamwange. Across all other social media pages, you may find me at Chief Samwa.
Okay. Yeah. A big thank you to you for coming to this, interesting conversation. BitsCast KE, we always talk about conversations that matter to young people and critical causes. It's been a pleasure having you. Until next time, it's a wrap. BitsCast KE, as always, keep it locked.
Mazungumzo ya kweli na jamii, uwezo kwa vijana, mabadiliko, mazungumzo ya kweli.